I'm more than happy to answer any questions. So please fire away if you have any. Yes?
I'm sorry. Can you tell me about the glazes, for example, on this piece?
Okay, so this is porcelain clay. So in terms of clay bodies, I mix all my own clays from powdered raw materials, except the porcelain. But then I introduce other materials into the porcelain. So really none of them are left alone as per a commercial clay body. So the clay matters hugely in all this work. So largely these pieces have either got nothing on them, but just the firing, or slip, or glaze. So this one is glaze on this piece. Normal white-ish glaze, but in the wood firing, it tends to go that greeny, celadon-y colour because of the reduction and yeah, okay.
I was curious, like this piece you're sitting right next to,
Yeah.
do you find in that kind of abstract and very kind of what I take as a visceral way of making that when you feel like it settles right in your eye, is there a component of something a little bit figurative, sometimes anthropomorphic?
Yes. But often, yeah, absolutely. But noticed afterwards. It's interesting, as I'm doing it, I'm not thinking of those things because I almost don't want to move there.
Right.
I'm not trying to make anthropomorphic or human figure. But yeah, afterwards I go, oh my goodness, there's that or there's that. But I think it's just a very direct, because it's a very direct making process, that can happen. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. So, yeah.
I have to apologize because I didn't see the beginning of the
okay.
lecture. But the piece that we were just speaking to, the one to your left,
Yeah.
it reminds me very much of the stones that you can find in the gardens in China.
Yes, limestone, yes, yeah.
Did any of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, apart from looking at Neolithic things, of course, then you start to see the same kind of textural, visceral qualities in lots of things. So one of the earlier slides I showed was just in front of the Boston Museum. There's a limestone piece. And I went, oh, it's so exciting. So yes, yeah, definitely. And then I visited Vietnam, and there are limestone islands, casts, and there's a shape. So it's almost like once you start working, you keep seeing it all over the place in lots of forms.
Well, even just how your piece, that one for example, has space included in it.
Yeah.
Which for the Chinese, that's part of the beauty. You must have space so you can look forward through the piece. And I see some of your pieces, that is the case.
Yeah. No, that's very important actually. Yeah, important aspect of it. Thank you for noticing. Okay, any more questions? Happy to sort of wander around and chat or to, if you...
One thing, I think I forgot to mention how you're such a leader in the conferences.
Leader in the conferences? I don't know that I'm a leader. That'll be the day.
You've heard from so many people. I mean, I think that's how Hillary met you. Many more who met you there. So
yeah, I've been to a few.
Maybe you could speak a little bit about that, and then a little about women in woodfire.
Yeah. Look, it's been an interesting path. I'm not normally a naturally natural speaker, hence notes. I've got better as I've learnt how to do it, because my first few attempts were I was very shy and found it difficult to talk. But because I've been invited to these things and I've had to speak, I've developed some means of doing that without feeling too uncomfortable, and then I've had really good response, and that's helped. So that, but yes, women in wood firing, yes, that's a kind of big topic. We you know, it is naturally a largely male field, whether it's because of the type of energy and process that it is, or whether it's just that men tend to get noticed a bit more than women. But there's been a strong attempt to shift that in the recent years. So at the Starworks conference, I was on a panel of just women wood firers talking about the kilns we have, and that was organised by Coleman Minogue, who writes the logbook, if anybody knows that wood firing little journal. And that was, and then in the Montana exhibition called conference called Cultural Confluence, that was organised by Tara Wilson, and that was very much the intent of her was to have more women included, and so they were in that conference.
Do you see women coming up?
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I do. Lots of young women really interested to do wood firing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, fortunately, because we have a bit of space, we've had assistants work for us over the time. We've had about 8, and 2 or 3 of them have gone on to be wood firers.
Mm.
So they've come, done some assisting for a while, apprenticing, and then gone on to build kilns. So we go on supporting that, movement.
I have questions from Facebook on someone watching.
Sorry.
From Scotland.
Sorry. Oh, okay.
She said, she asked, once she completed her thesis, did she feel that she was more informed by her practice? Has her PhD influenced her?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go through a process like that without really digging and deep into your psyche and your reading and your making in discussing your work.
Uh-huh.
So I was fortunate to have supervisors who weren't ceramicists.
Oh.
And I found that a very useful experience, looking at things from a very different point of view. But you just pull everything up out of yourself, and it's been very useful.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, and my work developed through all that.
Oh, I have a question about Australian females.
Females? Yes.
So,
I don't know if I can answer everything generally, but yes.
Yeah, I don't want you to be defined as like your
Yeah.
sex, your gender. But then it is, it's still, there's still a inequality. So, what do you think the scene in Australia?
Look, it has.
Female.
It's a hard one to answer. It has been quite largely a male-oriented field. With a few women sort of at the edges. There is definitely an intention to shift that, and so there is more inclusivity happening, which I think is really a positive sign.
Right.
Because there are some women who've worked, equally as long,
Yes.
but are probably not so noticed.
Do you mentor female students and maybe
Absolutely.
bring them into your studio and then have a little workshop?
Yep, I do, and we run a wood firing workshop for where I teach at the National Art School. We run a wood fire workshop for those students because they don't have wood kilns at their college,
right? Yeah.
And so we introduce them to wood firing, whether or not they're ever going to do that again. It doesn't matter to just know that this is broad spectrum.
That's great that you're such an inspiration.
Yeah, it's really important. Important to do that.
Yeah, that's great.
Offer something, for the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. Thank you for that answer.
Okay.
Any more say to follow up on that? Can you just say a few words about your students, because you're teaching at the master's level?
Yes.
What they're producing, what their wavelength is.
Quite diverse. None of them are actually wood firing because there isn't a wood kiln at the college. We used to have one, but we don't have it anymore. We can't really fire in the city now. But quite diverse makers. So there's definitely from sculpture work, throne work, quite a, and then they bring to their masters their histories, where they've come from. So we've got from straight through from a BFA student through to somebody who's been out in the field for some time. It's quite an age range and a diverse practice that they do. Yeah.
What do you enjoy most about teaching?
Oh, the journey with the students. It's quite privileged, really. When I supervised Masters 1, it's a 2-year degree, and in Masters 1 they come in and they're very unsure of themselves and what they're actually doing, and then through a process of writing and rewriting their studio proposal and their annotated bibliography and all of that, they're actually working out what they're doing, and so I'm on that journey with them.
Aww.
So that is really, really good, really special actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like it. Yeah.
And then I just have one more question. When did you start making sculpture? Was it as part of the process of a PhD, or had you
Oh
started-
no, about mid-90s. So kind of how many years is that? 25 years maybe. 25 years ago. Gosh, the impetus for that was actually a practical one. We had, probably the same in the US, I'm not sure, but it was actually becoming quite difficult to sell pots in the 90s. It was fairly universal, I think, but certainly tableware, because we had a lot of influx of
Mass-produced,
imported, mass-produced one, and pots were seen a little bit, a little bit. What will I say? Not to use an Australian expression of daggy, but something like that.
People don't,
Old and brown.
Understand what daggy means.
And I was just losing heart. So then I thought, well, okay, I just stop for a while and see what happens. But I didn't want to stop making. I need to make. I couldn't live life without some making happening. So then I thought, well, I'll start making something that's not functional. And I thought, what process will I use? And the nearest I thought to throwing was soft slab work. So I worked with soft slabs, and then I started stretching slabs, which kind of brought a whole new world to into my practice. And I did that for a while. Didn't sell any better, but that's right. And then I went in to do a master's. So that's when I did my master's in the 90s. And then that solidified that. But then I came through to the Upper St. Croix, I call it Croix Valley studio tour with Jeff Astrike, visiting there. And pots were selling like crazy, and I just couldn't believe how many people came through the door in the weekend. There was something like, I don't know, it was lots, wasn't it? 2,000 something. You don't get that many people interested, and there were really interesting questions that were happening at that tour. People were saying, "What are you thinking about when you're making these things?" And I'm going, "Wow, nobody's asked me that." So it really was encouraging, and then also I had been missing it. So there's so I needed to bring back making pots for use. So then it was amalgamating the two, and couldn't let go of one or the other. They're both me. Yeah.
So how much time now are you spending making more functional wares versus...
Gosh, that's a hard one to answer, because they depend on the firing. So I need both for the firing, because some pots go here and some pots go at the back of the kiln, and then some sculpture goes at the bottom in the fireworks, and some goes right at the very back. So then but I tend to make sculpture for a bit and then throw for a bit. So I can't chop and change too much. But yeah, they're always towards a firing. I will have both works. Yeah.
I have another question on Facebook. Environment has played a major influence on Sandy's practice. Does she have a place on her bucket list that she would like to visit, and why?
Oh my goodness, I have hundreds of bucket lists. I mean, apart from anything, I haven't seen much of America except cities. I want to go into where it's actually raw.
Oh,
I would just love to go to some of the
Have you been to
fantastic.
Africa?
No, haven't been to Africa. Haven't been to Africa. Would pretty much like to go there. And of course, I would really like to go to South America, because my parents are born in Argentina. Yeah. So that's definite. And we both want to walk in Patagonia. That's one of our kind of bucket lists.
Yeah. You might find something, inspiring, and then
You can't walk around without seeing things and being So yes, that's an interesting question.
Yes, it's from I can't pronounce his name. He said he is a guy. It's Strafe Wilson.
Oh, okay.
It's from Scotland. So Straiph.
Okay. No, I don't. I mean, maybe I have met him.
He seems to be a fan.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Strafe.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you were in Scotland.
I was in Scotland. Yes, I could well have.
You may have met him.
Met him.
He may have attended your conference. Or,
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
no.
wonderful.
Yeah.
You have someone, from
Yeah, that's
Scotland
great. Yeah, I'd like to go back
watching
there
you.
actually. I mean, I just like to travel actually. Every year I like to travel.
So your parents were born in Argentina?
I'm born in Argentina, in Buenos Aires.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then wartime, they did schooling in England. There's a lot of expats go back to send their kids to school in England, so they did that. Then they went back post the war to Buenos Aires and met and married there. And then decided that Argentina was not in a terribly good state, so they moved to England, and then they promptly had 3 children, and then they decided UK, London wasn't the best place to be either.
Yeah.
And as a lot of English people did at that stage, immigration was the big thing. So my parents were looking at Canada and Australia. Australia came up first.
So far
And
away.
we moved.
Yeah.
So we came on a ship,
Yeah.
what they called 7-pound poms,
Yes. Yeah.
through the Suez Canal, which you can't go
Yes.
through anymore, but I
Yeah.
can remember it clearly.
Yeah.
Sort of
Wow.
Egyptian pyramids on the side.
Wow.
So at the age of 7 we moved to Australia.
Yeah, you moved to Sydney.
Yeah, moved to Sydney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, long trip.
Great story
Yeah.
about immigration.
It is. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's...
Any more questions from anyone? If not, we will just stop here, and then we can just mingle and talk about the work and get to know you in a more personal way.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.